Okay, and after all this, you still have time to do this podcast we mentioned before called Puño y Letra in English. I think that could be translated as in my own hand, right?
Yes. Well, my role in this project is helping to internationalize the project.
Okay.
I initially help with the building of the website, and I work to just promote content and work on the translations. But the podcast itself, so the idea of the podcast and the selection of the interviews and preparing all that, this is done by Maria López Rovira, who's director of Televisió de Cardedeu.
If I've not mistaken, it is a podcast devoted to women authors from all over Spain.
Correct. Yes, it was a difficult task for Maria and for Clara. Clara has lots of contacts with publishers, and so that also helped with the production of the podcast. And the criteria for this first season, we hope we're going to have a second one next year, was to select women that talk about social topics as feminism, patriarchy, motherhood, women living in rural areas, or the role of women in the civil war in Spain. So all kind of topics that are just beyond adventures or just fiction. So it's more just this kind of literature to reflect on topics. And they had to have, for this first season, books that were translated into English. And that was the criteria to make the selection. For this season, there are 20 female writers that are alive. And Maria, Clara, and someone else in the team, Edu, they just take the set, go and just visit those authors. They've been in Galicia, they've been in Valencia, in the Basque Country, in Madrid, and also in Barcelona, interviewing these authors, talking about the books. And in some cases, the interviews are just beyond the books. It's more about how the story behind, how it was born, what was the intention of the writer. So it's not just, it doesn't give any spoilers on the book, but it's just a lot of interesting. In fact, because I'm working on the translation, this is like, Maria, I just need to have this book because I want to read it, because I've just been working on the content for the podcast after the interview. So it's a podcast and video podcast. So the podcast is available on Spotify, and then it's recorded in high quality in a very nice set that it's always the same. What we call it like our literary corner, and it's very nice podcast, 35-minute stops, and it's very nice. Always starts with some section of the book. That is the starting point of the podcast, and then the conversation flows with Maria, who is a great host and a great interviewer.